Hey y'all, this is Jess. Welcome back to Sunflower Dairy. So in today's video, I'm actually doing quite a few things today to get ready for garden season. So I just winter sowed a bunch of companion labels and larkspur, and I'm going to be taking those out to my collection, but I'm also going to be pre-sprouting ranunculus, and I'm also going to be sowing leeks. So let's get started. Check out the collection of winter sowed things that I'm getting. I'm getting quite a few jugs, so I'm excited to see how well these are going to do. All right, let's go in and pre-sprout our ranunculus. A lot of cut flower farmers will grow ranunculus because this is such a top quality flower. A lot of florists love this. A lot of people love it for springtime, like Mother's Day and Easter and all of those holidays. A lot of times you can get really early spring blooms with these, so very bright, cheery spring vibes with this flower, and you can see all the layers and everything. So these bring a really beautiful look to bouquets. So this is definitely, if you want to be growing cut flowers and if you want to be actually, you know, selling bouquets, or if you have a subscription list, like I have a subscription list where I will cut bouquets and take them to people. So if you want to be growing cut flowers, this is a really great one to grow. So ranunculus comes in corms, and they kind of look like little dahlia tubers. And what you're going to be doing is just rehydrating them. So we're going to be soaking them in water for about 3 hours. So the easiest way to do this is to literally just put your bags of corms. The bags usually either have holes in them that they come in, or they come in mesh bags. But I usually just soak them in a bowl of water, and I usually just shake the bags around every couple times an hour, and this helps to make bubbles in the water, which makes oxygen, and that prevents growth of, you know, bacteria and different things on your corms if you keep that oxygen flowing. And I'll even change the water out every hour. So I've started about probably 3 different rounds of ranunculus so far. I think I have one last and final round after this one I just started, and right around where I'm going to be planting them is right around probably mid-March. What I'm going to be doing is keeping an eye on my forecast, because what you want for the temperature, now these are all going to be going into hoop houses, all this ranunculus. But what I'm going to be doing is keeping an eye on the forecast, because you don't really want the forecast to be going any lower than 28 degrees Fahrenheit, because if it goes any lower than that, then you're going to run risk of your ranunculus corms rotting, and you don't want that. But ranunculus does love cool weather, so right around the 30 degree 40 degree range is really where ranunculus really likes to start growing. So we're going to keep our eyes open for those kinds of forecasts. So probably about mid-March for me. My last frost date in zone 5B 6A is right around the 2nd week in May. So usually ranunculus is planted out about a month to 6 weeks before your last frost date, just because they are a cool weather flower. And if you do get temperatures that dip a little bit cooler, you can put frost cloth over it, or if you do have your ranunculus outdoors, then you could do low tunnels with the frost cloth. But there's tons of people who plant their ranunculus in high tunnels, low tunnels, they do frost cloth. So there's so many ways that if those temperatures do go pretty low, you do have different ways that you can protect your ranunculus. Now, since I am in such a cooler zone, that's why I pre-sprout my ranunculus in the really early spring / end of winter, because my zone is so cool. Now, a lot of really warm zones, they will actually plant out their ranunculus the same time they're planting out their tulips and daffodils in the fall. They can overwinter it, which here I cannot because my zone is so cool. So I am pre-sprouting to get early spring blooms. They'll be going out into high tunnels. If we get really cool temperatures, they will get frost cloth and protection. These are going to soak for 3 hours. And now we're going to go out to the high tunnel and start some leek seeds while these are soaking for 3 hours, and then we'll come back and get these started. All right, I am out in the high tunnel greenhouse and I am going to start some leeks. So let's get started. So leeks are in the same family as onions and shallots and all that. They all have the same kind of growth pattern, so I like to plant them all the same. So what I like to do is just fill up little flower pots, and then I just sow a whole bunch of leek or onion or shallot seeds. I just do a thick layer of seeds, and with leeks or onions, their roots are very wiry, so you can very easily get them apart and transplant them. So this saves a lot of space, especially when you're starting seeds indoors and you don't have a lot of grow light room. This saves a lot of space growing a ton of them in one little flower pot, and then you can just separate them out when it's time to plant. All right, so I'm literally just filling up my little flower pot with dirt, and then we're just gonna sow our seeds right in there. So first off, I'm gonna pre-soak my seed starting soil. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and take a whole bunch of leek seeds. All right, and now I'm literally just going to sprinkle a ton of them on top of here. Just a nice even layer. And like I said, these are really easy to just separate out when it's time to plant them out. Now these do like to be a little bit covered, so we're literally just going to sprinkle a little bit of seed starting soil on top, and then we're just going to go ahead and spritz them in. So I have taken my leeks or my onions and started them indoors, and I also have just started them and left them out in the greenhouse, and then whenever they're ready to germinate, they will germinate. The greenhouse is not heated, so it depends on how warm it gets in here, and also the daylight, when the daylight is long enough for things to start germinating. But I am going to take these inside and get them a little bit of a head start, because I like to be able to plant my leeks and onions out earlier, because they are more of a cool weather crop, so you can get these planted out a lot sooner than most things. So I like to get a head start on these. Alright y'all, now that we have our leek seeds started, let's go in and finish pre-sprouting our ranunculus flowers. Alright, back inside, and the ranunculus corms have been soaking for about 1.5 hours. I just want to show you the water. See how it's very like dusty looking? So this is when I would go ahead and change my water, and then it will be clean, and then you're just going to shake your bags around to keep the bubble and airflow going. Alright, now that's clean. We're going to let this soak for another at least hour and a half. Alright, it's been exactly 3 hours, so now the ranunculus is done soaking. As you can see, these have pretty much doubled in size, those bags. They looked barely full before, but now they look about halfway full, so you can tell that they definitely have gotten bigger. Alright, let's get these started. So when I pre-sprout ranunculus, I like to put them in these little trays to get them started. A lot of people like using the great big trays, but I actually like using the smaller ones, because that way you can kind of fit your trays better underneath your grow lights. Sometimes you have all different size grow lights, and I just feel like this is an easier size to kind of fit everything in. Now your ranunculus doesn't need a ton of room when pre-sprouting because you're basically just pre-sprouting. They're not going to stay in here. So basically they're just going to be in here until you start seeing the first little bit of green and they start getting a little bit of roots. Then you're going to start taking them out because it's going to be about time to plant them out into the tunnels. So there's about 60 or more ranunculus corms in here, and I can usually get away with putting them in about 3 trays. Alright, so I'm just going to be filling up my trays. So basically I'm just going to be filling these up halfway so that I can set the ranunculus corms in there. I'm just going to go ahead and fill all 3 of these because we're definitely going to need all 3 for those 60 corms. Alright, we're going to go ahead and pre-soak the soil. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start taking some of our corms out of our bags here. Now, as you can see, these are definitely starting to look like dahlia tubers. See how those plumped up? They look all nice and hydrated. Alright, let's get these nestled in our trays. Alright, and we're just going to start putting these in our trays. So I'm not too concerned about the spacing of these because, like I said, our corms are not going to be staying in here. We're just pre-sprouting them until we start seeing green, so it's not really a big deal. See, this is, can you see this is actually a couple different corms growing together. Sometimes after you soak these, you can kind of loosen them up and separate the corms, but sometimes when they have grown together like that, you can't get them apart. But sometimes you can, which if you can get those plants separated, then you can plant them out as individual plants instead of big clusters. See this one right here? This is a bunch of plants all grown together. Very gently. See, that one came apart, so now you have separate plants. So whenever you can do that, I like to do that because that way you just have more individual plants. Alright, usually I can fit about 20 or so in each one of these trays. There's about 60 plus corms that we just soaked. So between these 3 trays we should be pretty good as far as being able to fit all of these corms in these trays here. Basically, we're just covering these. We're not doing anything fancy. We just want to make sure that they're covered. If a little bit of the tops are sticking out, it's not too big of a deal. They're a lot like dahlia tubers, and if any of you have ever pre-sprouted dahlia tubers, sometimes the tops of the dahlia tubers where the eyes are, sometimes those aren't super covered, but it's not too big of a deal if the eyes where the new growth isn't super covered. But as long as you get a majority of your corms covered, that's the main thing. Alright, so after you have your corms covered, you're just going to go ahead and spritz them in. I'm going to go ahead and do each one of these trays. So these are going to go in the plant grow room, and I'm just going to, I'm not going to put them on a heat mat or anything because these are a cool weather flower. They're going to go on the plant starting station, and I'm just going to put them right next to the grow lights where I start all the rest of my seeds. And as soon as I start seeing just a little bit of green sprouts poking through, as soon as I start seeing that, they'll go right underneath the grow lights. And that's what our trays look like. Alright, these are going to go in the grow room. I am going to bring out my trays of ranunculus. I actually have started different rounds of ranunculus. So I'll do an earlier round and then a mid round and then a late round, so that you have continuous blooms of ranunculus throughout early spring, later spring, and then the end of spring. So I'm going to bring out my very first ones because they're just barely starting to show the green. I started them probably a week or so ago. So I'm going to bring those out, see if you can see the little green eyes starting to poke through. So I'm going to go grab those. All right. Let's try to get this to focus. All right, these are my trays right here. I don't know if you're going to be able to see, but they're little tiny eyes. Do you see them right there? There's a little tiny eye, little green eye starting to start up. There's one right here. They're little tiny green spikes. Those are the little eyes starting to grow on the ranunculus. And they're literally everywhere in here. I'm seeing them everywhere. So that is super exciting. All right, y'all. Thank you all for coming along with me today and helping me get things ready for spring and starting different seeds and ranunculus corms and just getting ready. Spring is right around the corner. Thank you all for watching and have a blessed day.